And now I'd like to open the meeting to the sharing of testimonies of healing through Christian Science. Chardell from Pennsylvania, go ahead.
Good evening, and thank you very much, Mrs. Roberts, for the beautiful readings tonight. And tonight, I would like to express my gratitude for physical healing, thanks to the prayers and support of my practitioner. Last Sunday, I began to experience flu-like symptoms, and although I continued my normal activities, I knew that I needed help and emailed my practitioner. We didn't have to talk because I knew that her prayers would be sufficient. I was able to do and to try my part while praying, I remembered what a testifier had said about being healed one night when he reached for his Bible and only by the light from his clock or radio found these words in Isaiah. Fear thou not, for I am with thee. Be not dismayed, for I am thy God. I will strengthen thee, yea, I will help thee. During the night, the fever didn't break, it just went away. By morning, I was totally free and had the best nap I've ever had. I would like to be honest and report that this was so remarkable, having had flu several years ago, that I asked for continued prayers to help me with right thinking. And here we are. Thank you and good night.
Thank you. Linda from Pennsylvania, go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you very much for those very powerful, beautiful readings. And thank you always for the beautiful music that is so lovely to have before as we prepare for this meeting. Tonight I would like to express my gratitude for all that is shared freely here, from discussions, literature, testimonies, and the forum. It is a great blessing to hear experiences of others. It is encouraging, helpful, supportive, and inspiring. The other day I was out shoveling snow after the recent big storm we had that left 2 feet of heavy snow. I was mindful to pace the work. In early evening, I began to experience back pain, and I could not get comfortable. I started to feel fearful, especially since my job requires me to be flexible and active. Following the feelings, I firmly turned my thought to God and His messages that are found in the Bible and Science and Health. While praying, I realized earlier that day while I was out, I had been listening to conversations about the dangers of snow and shoveling. We are taught here to watch our thinking. I saw that I had allowed the thoughts of accident and danger to take my thought away from God and His care, and I needed to be firmer on the side of God. Like the previous testifier, I carry around in my pocket a quote from my practitioner from Isaiah 41. It says, Fear not, for I am with thee. Be not dismayed, for I am thy God. I will strengthen thee. I will help thee. This meant I could trust God as the source of my strength, movement, and activity. I had been feeling joy and gratitude while shoveling, and it was to help others. So I trusted this good to continue to bless me. I continued in prayer with all that I was learning about God and man here, rather than focus on worry. By that night, I was free and comfortable, and the next day I was able to go to work and be active, and have had no other issues since. I am also very grateful for the practitioner support I was getting that day. I know her work extended beyond what I had originally called her for. Thank you very much for this service tonight.
Thank you. Jeremy.
I'm so grateful to God for a huge lesson that I feel I have finally learned, and that is the understanding that I can't save anyone. Only God has that power. Numerous times in my life, I felt it was up to me to figure situations out and help people with their problems. Every time I failed. And some of those attempts took years of trying before I figured that out. Now, with the lessons I have learned here, thanks to Christian Science and daily practitioner support, I can see that all things, great and small, must be given to God. There's no portion of life that is up to me to decide upon, to figure out, or to save. All of it comes down to God and what He would have me do. This has helped me let go of many regrets and to know that my children and those who I have cared for are in the best hands, God's. What a relief this is, and what joy I have because of this. I'm so grateful that Christian Science has such practical, life-changing teaching, and grateful to all at this church that have worked for so many years to share it with the world. Thank you. And now I have a testimony from Joseph.
Hi, it's Joseph from Barcelona. I'm really grateful today for the Bible lessons and for those who take the time to author it and those who discuss it on the forum. I remember there was a time when the Bible itself was not really a book that I was very fond of. Even though I was Roman Catholic, the Roman Catholics, we had missals which had certain Bible readings in 3-year cycles, and even the clerics in the church have their own prayers of the Bible and recitations of the Bible in 3-year cycles. So there was never a real reason to look outside the ritual or the readings which were given by the church. I'm really grateful that that isn't the case with a Bible lesson, that there's always something new, fresh and inspiring, and then in all the different ways that it uplifts humanity's thinking. Even when I came into Christian Science, I was never particularly fond of the lesson, and I didn't really see any point of reading it daily. But now that I understand more about the obligation which is upon me to do it, it became much easier, because I realize that my study of the lesson directly impacts the upliftment of humanity's thinking, and it throws out the balance which is trying to declare that evil is somehow stronger than good, or that the Bible is not relevant in today's society. I really feel like I'm doing something positive when I study the lesson, because by changing my thinking about life around me, I'm changing everyone's thinking, and I'm very grateful for that. Last week I didn't take time to study the lesson. I was so caught up in work that the lesson took second place. I managed to glance at it a few times, but I didn't really give it that moment which I have been lucky enough to give it in recent months. I was really praying about that in the last few days, about how once again I could make the lesson alive. And I was working with a few different words to try to get back on track. One word again and again which kept coming up was this idea of keeper, which I mentioned last week, and that in turn reminded me of the word commitment. And I remembered again that just as perhaps in any relationship, whether it be boyfriend, girlfriend, or husband and wife, there are some days where things go easily, and there are some days when things go badly, and indeed there's some days when you just don't want to be there. But at the end of the day, it's always the commitment which brings you back to the table, which makes you want to begin again, no matter what's happened in the last few days. And I should have remembered that, because that's always the advice I'm giving my students when they talk about how they've fallen away from their English practice. So it's good advice to take from myself, that even maybe how sometimes things don't seem to go so well, it's the commitment that we make, that spiritual idea of commitment, which keeps bringing us back and keeps saying, I will see this in a bigger way in my experience of it in the last few days. So for this, I'm really very, very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. This is Bruce, and I'd like to say what a wonderful power being thankful is. And the reason I'm saying that is because I'm remembering years ago, Mrs. Evans, our teacher in our church, told of her early experience when she and her husband had not a lot in the way of money. And when it came time for her to pay the bills, she would stop and thank God for the service that this bill represented. And as a result, there wasn't any worry, concern, or fear over the money, but rather gratitude. There was a time in my life when I was very fearful and worried about money and paying the bills, and they were coming. And upon hearing this story from our teacher, I thought, I'm going to try this. So the bills came in, and I just stopped to thank God. And I thought, this service that this bill represents is representative of the fact that God loves me and is providing something that I need. And it's all part of God's plan, God taking care of his man. And this is a principle that applies universally. After all, God is universal. And I tried doing this consistently, but I could find that the worry and fear didn't have such a grip on me. And the gratitude for the service and the gratitude for God for taking care of me was very joyous and uplifting, and it actually made me feel so much better. And I'm sure that it had a positive impact on my health and well-being. So I'm thankful for gratitude. It's like our connection to Almighty God. And that, of course, is a wonderful thing. And grateful for the lesson that our teacher shared with us. And it was a good, helpful thing for me. Florence or Dede, go ahead. We don't hear you. You may be on mute where you are.
I'm sorry. This is Dede. Thank you. For most of my life, I thought of God as some distant being that I was to call on when I desperately wanted something or when I was in trouble. Through my study of Christian Science, I've learned to refer to God as Father, and I now understand the importance of this. I've learned that God is my protector and my provider, and most importantly, that he is ever near, always right where I am. I'm learning continually that God is my father, mother, and my very best friend. And I'm so grateful to this church for making me confident in this truth that has completely changed my life and enabled me to help others more effectively. Thank you so much for tonight's readings, the music, and the testimonies. I'm so grateful to be here tonight.
Thank you. Benjamin.
Yeah, thank you. I want to say how grateful I am for the reading tonight. It's always inspiring to hear the readings. Today, in my house, I was just counting my blessings. And one of the ones that came was, I remember about 4 years ago, or a little bit more than 4 years ago, the house I was living in, about a block away from here, it was a wonderful house. Were taken care of by the church, members of this church, including me. I really loved living in that house. But there was a time when Um, it wasn't as it was when I first moved in there because the church, the house was taken away from the church through somebody who didn't care much about the church, who used to, but he wasn't actually caring more about the church, but more about himself. And he wasn't being grateful to God. But I was living in that house. Instead of him being a blessing to me, at some point he became wicked to me. And the blessing wasn't coming from that house as it was before. But I have learned here, through Christian Science, what place means. One of the lessons I learned here was if you feel like your place is being taken away from you, you're probably at the wrong place. Because the place given to us by God cannot be taken away from us. God's blessings cannot be taken away from anybody. When you feel that way, it means you are at the wrong place or at the wrong house. So I prayed to God, and the church was concerned too with the situation. So through God's love, a very good friend in this church who got touched bought a house and gladly allowed me to become one of his tenants. Today has been one of the greatest blessings I have received in my life. And God proved to me that time I was being worried about my home, that I was going to lose the apartment I was living for a very long time, that time I was actually at the wrong place. But God, through the love that He had for me, He provided a very good place for me. I have the best house today, living in the best neighborhood. My neighbors are the most wonderful neighbors anyone can dream of. They're always happy to see me. I mean, I can't wait to come home every day. It's just a blessing to me what this lesson means to me, knowing that our place cannot be taken away from us. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim from Arizona, go ahead.
Thank you. I am most grateful to hear that the newsletter is about to be published, and I'm filled with gratitude for everyone that has been able to participate and contribute something to its fulfillment. It just fills me with joy to hear that. And this week I have already started on the next newsletter, and it has been working very smoothly and comfortably. When I get Jim out of the way and let God direct, all goes well. Thank you.
Thank you. Betty from California, go ahead.
Tonight I'm grateful for a healing of some back trouble that I've had recently. A couple of weeks ago I noticed some back pain associated with that occurred when I moved or bent over. When I called a Plainfield practitioner, she talked to me about needing to move around and stretch more, and this being related to being sluggish in my thinking as well as in moving around and doing things. She gave me several things to work with to watch for the creeping things associated with age creeping up on one. Also, all movement is in mind. And gave me the section in Science and Health, starting with page 243, on age. It's about 2 or 3 pages. Very, very, very good. And to think about age is unfoldment of good. Later that week, the Bible study talked about the unreality of error. That really helped, too. While this healing wasn't overnight, I did get better each day, and it was an opportunity to get closer to God, which I needed to do. One morning, A line out of one of Mrs. Eddy's hymns really hit me. Quote, break earth's stupid rest, unquote. If God rests, and it occurred to me, if God rests in action, then as his reflection, so can I. So grateful for the lessons learned, for practitioner help, this church, and for the Bible studies and roundtables. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike from New York, go ahead. Okay, we don't hear you, Mike. You may be on mute on your end. Okay, still not hearing you. We'll come back to you, Mike. Fairley from Maryland, go ahead.
Thank you. I am very grateful for the wonderful reading tonight, beginning with the very beginning and the progression of the truth from the beginning on to early Christianity. I want to express my special gratitude tonight for the wonderful Plainfield website. I originally found Plainfield, which has changed my life, by searching for Christian Science on the web. Now we have a very modern update of our website, thanks to our dedicated technician, Jeremy. My practitioner suggested that I ask my son, who is in his 30s and not a Christian Scientist, to have a look at it and give his reaction. He did so a couple of days ago and was truly astounded by it and electrified that our services and Bible studies and roundtables and all are carried on all the media, and he expressed particular amazement that it's even on iTunes. He said he would definitely tune in, for which I was very grateful. Many thanks to Jeremy, to my practitioner, and all those at Plainfield reaching out across the world in every way to make true Christian Science available to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Elsie from Alabama, go ahead.
Thank you. I want to express my gratitude for a healing I received recently. I had a very bad fall, and I had called my neighbor for help. And he insisted I be taken to the hospital as I needed stitches. And they gave me stitches. After that, he insisted I stay overnight for observation. As soon as I could, I called my practitioner from this church for help. And she gave me selections of the 91st Psalm and accidents to keep that in thought, which I did overnight in the hospital. The next day, the doctor told me, after he had looked over a CAT scan and some other things they had done, that they couldn't find anything wrong with me. And he said, given my age and the circumstances, he didn't know how this was possible. The nurse told me she couldn't believe my age. The doctor said it was a miracle, and I replied to him, no, it wasn't a miracle. My angels were with me, and he agreed. It was God's angels that helped me through all this. And I believe it was a result of the teachings over the years that I have received here in Plainfield. I start out every morning with I am ageless, diseaseless, and deathless. And I know I am never outside of God's protection. I especially want to thank my practitioner for her loving help. I have found that each time I have an experience, it makes me stronger and gets me closer to God. and this was no exception. As promised in Psalms, he gives his angels charge over thee to keep thee in all thy ways. They bear thee up in their hands, lest thou dash thy foot against a stone. I want to thank Florence for the readings and for the beautiful music and for the testimonies tonight. I am so grateful for all these blessings.
Thank you. Okay, Mike, go ahead.
Thank you for the wonderful service. After leaving dairy farming, I spent a few years teaching skiing in Colorado. That ended with the birth of my daughter and became my job. About that time, I learned about Christian Science, which I hoped would fill some voids in my life, which were from not knowing God. While no longer teaching skiing, I maintained the Colorado connection. This gave me a chance to flee to the mountains to study and apply Christian Science, which I found I could do better there than at home. About 5 years ago, I had a golden opportunity to test the fruits of my studies. Upon removing my ski boot at the end of the day, I found one of my toes frozen as solid as an ice cube. Having experienced small doses of frostbite in the past, I knew there was only one solution: God is revealed through Christian Science. I'd been trying to integrate into my thought the scientific statement of being, and there is no matter, so here was a chance to demonstrate that. I went to work with great results. My toe stayed whole. I battled unfounded fears to the contrary, though, for 6 weeks before finally calling a practitioner. One call eliminated the latent fear, which I intellectually knew was ridiculous but couldn't seem to overcome. I know God healed me because previous numbness in my feet was healed as well from this. Coming to Plainfield, I now understand why I entertained error for so long. I hadn't been able to overcome my material sense studying on my own. Listening to Bible studies, roundtables, watches, services, testimonies at Plainfield brings a spiritual joy weekly that I previously experienced only once in a blue moon. The basics I'm learning every time I participate is finally paying off with the ability to think better from the standpoint of God rather than that constant stream of mortal thought. I'm so grateful to God for his forgiving nature of always having another chance to grow. I'm so grateful for the Plainfield Church and all the members whose spirit is raising me into an understanding of Christ Jesus and Mary Baker Eddy's teachings.
Thank you. Shahidat from Maryland, go ahead.
Good evening. I want to say how thankful I am as well for the website updates. In particular, I want to say how thankful I am about how easy it is to navigate the website on a mobile device. I generally sleep with my smartphone on my bedside table because it doubles as my alarm clock. A few weeks ago, I woke up in a major funk, and after reading the lesson, I still couldn't raise my thought, but I was able to easily navigate to the website and look at some of the articles from earlier workers. And it's just very easy to do that now on a mobile device, and I know a lot of work went into that, so I just want to say how grateful I am for that. I also wanted to express my gratitude for the other testimonies and the readings this evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Florence from Georgia, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to thank God for giving us the dominion, his own power to help us in every situation. I'm so grateful to learn that we really never lack anything because his power is always at hand. Recently, I was to do some work for the church, and there was constant resistance. Whatever I did, something went wrong with what I was doing. But to know that this is not of God, God has given us dominion, and constantly staying with that truth broke this mesmerism. and the work is completed. I am so grateful that we can realize we are not victims, and we can realize we do not have to stay in between truth and error, because God is all. All power belongs to Him, and He has given us that power. Grateful to be here tonight, grateful for all the other testimonies. Thank you.
Thank you.